It's official.
And here we go.
So hold on. All right, guys. Welcome to episode 1 of the Remnant Podcast.
Sir.
So my name is Luis, aka Audio Life. This is
Danny, aka Danny O.
And we together are starting this new adventure.
Yes.
Now, we have kind of recorded other episodes thinking that would be it, but there was a trial and error. So we're starting off fresh with this, and we're going to go a little bit over probably different topics for today. Every other episode will have an established theme. But so we can just get things started. Danny, I think I remember that in episode 1 of the original, one of the things that we actually did talk about was, and this doesn't get talked about enough, I think. I'm not saying off of the pulpit, more saying in general with men and more Christian men, to be more accurate for this. We don't talk. We don't express feelings. We don't. I know I still kind of hold back sometimes. But one of the things I know I've recently changed in my life was more to, as males, we don't hear the word "I love you" enough.
Well, I mean, statistically, if we're being honest and open about it, women are always celebrated, which is great. It's awesome. Love them. But like in all honesty, like when is a man really shown appreciation? Like I read a quote one time, and they were saying that the first time a man will ever receive flowers will be at his gravesite.
That's a little sad.
It is, but there's so much truth behind it too. Like,
I think my wife's brought me flowers. I can't remember.
Well, I mean, we just celebrated Father's Day last weekend.
Here's a weird statistic I just heard. It was from a comedian, but I'm pretty sure it's not that far off. Father's Day is if we're talking about holidays, Christmas is 1, Mother's Day is 2. Bro, Father's Day is 20.
I believe it. But
Halloween and Arbor Day, or Columbus Day.
Arbor Day?
I don't know, but that's more important than Father's Day. Like I can understand, like it as, and that's a sad truth as a society. Well, dads tend to not be there. Hey, I'm gonna go get some milk.
But it's a cultural thing, though. I mean, if you take it back to what I don't know, let's say the 1930s, 1940s. The man was always given the image of being the provider, being the stay-at-home mom with the 2.5 kids. Where they get the half kid from, I don't know. Maybe
that right.
Yeah. But that was the function in the image of the nuclear family. But nowadays, I mean, in society, how many examples do we have of the nuclear family? How many times do people always bring up the fact that, oh, so-and-so, he grew up without a dad, or so-and-so, he had a dad, but he either got locked up or he unfortunately deceased.
Yeah, didn't make it because he was part of the streets or something.
Right.
And it's very unfortunate.
But in retrospect, though, we also have men that are present but are not present.
Okay, give an example.
So, for me personally, my father was present in the household, but he was, at least with me, I know he seemed to change it up a little bit with my younger brother, but he wasn't present. I understand, wanting to work and provide, which is great.
Right.
I had a few things that I'm pretty sure I know for a fact I was blessed and fortunate enough to have them, but it wasn't, showing up to my soccer games or showing up to my baseball games or football games, what have you. It was always, I'll sign you up, buy you the bare minimum of what you think you might need, and then drop you off at practice, pick you up, drop you off at the game if I'm home.
At least you got sports. I didn't get sports growing up. It's whatever.
But I mean,
I did.
You and I did have different kind of lifestyles growing up. I mean, it was similar but different.
So let me tell you a little bit about me. So for me growing up, it was incredibly weird because when I was born, my dad was what, 56, 57, 58. I'm not making this up. 50. And my mom was 24.
Wow.
Huge age gap.
Right. Like he could literally be old enough to be her dad.
Yes. There's more weirdness to it. If I'm being very frank. Let me see. So he already had kids with his first wife.
Right.
So let me see. His first wife was named Julia. My mom is named Julia. He's named Luis. My older brother's named Luis. I'm named Luis. We weren't creative in our family.
But you have a lot of creativity, though.
Yes.
So how do you explain that? You just said, in my family, we're not creative, but
as far as names go.
Oh, okay. I'm like, you're like one of.
No, I know. Currently my brother is what looks like my older Twinkie. He is, let me see, if I'm 36, he is 66. 30-year age gap. It's really weird. It's a Freaky Friday kind of situation on the aspect that I look at him and he looks like Pops how as I remember him,
right?
Versus I look like Pops to him as he remembers him. It's weird.
That is weird.
It's incredibly weird.
I mean, sorry to the audience. I know I keep making these faces. I suck at poker. Sorry. My wife would be the first one to tell you I suck at poker. It's just like, like you and I we're close, and I know for a fact that, these are some of the topics we haven't really sat down and talked about in detail.
So now bringing it back to the topic, the unfortunate truth is that my dad was one way with his first kids.
Okay.
Not to say the best. My brothers told me stories, and it had to do with like I'm gonna say like that old school machismo. Hey, yo soy el hombre, whatever.
Right. Which is ingrained in us culturally, unfortunately.
Right. And he would constantly go to the doctor versus I had him in the autumn of his years.
Right.
And a shell of what he used to be, more calm, like, no, like talk to him first before you discipline him. But at the same time, because he was much older, the situation became that, well, he had diabetes, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. He didn't take care of himself, unfortunately, throughout life. He was more of the, me muero de lo que sea, de algo me voy a morir.
Si no es del diabetes, va a ser un carro.
Exactly. So the unfortunate truth is that my mom ended up kind of living a life of a nurse, taking care of him. Oh. So I didn't get, I mean, it's not that she didn't try to raise a boy in a Christian household and this and that. And gracias a Dios, my dad did accept the Lord throughout his life, throughout the last years of his life. And when he passed away, we know he's waiting for us up there. That's not, that part isn't an issue. She tried, but trying to deal with being a caretaker in one hand and
a mother in the other,
raising a boy who is very much like his dad. So was a little hard. And so there's like not that emotional connection. So yeah, growing up and especially, in relationships and now in my marriage, it's like a whole, yes, the Lord will heal you of your pains, your travesties, your transgressions of anything. But there's that little mental gap and this and that it's okay to say like, hey, I need help. Like, I don't understand why I do this or why I do that or why I can't take a hug or something like that.
For speaking on this, so on that topic, for me, it was very difficult. I had to come to the terms that I had to uproot this pain, this bitterness that was dug deep in me. So interesting enough, what you're describing is that your dad was able to have almost like a reset. What is it? I don't want to say new family, but the second family.
Yes.
Right?
No. Yeah, it's true.
Well, I got to see the reset within my own home. The way I was raised and treated was different than the way that my brother was treated.
How so?
Well, for me, it was always the stern hand, the very short, very impatient. Whereas with my brother, it'd be like, es que no lo entiendes. Está creciendo. I'm like,
is it that situation where like you guys are working on the car? Aquí, pon la luz aquí.
No, yeah. And then,
no, aquí.
And then when you would get disciplined, si sigues llorando, te voy a dar más para que llores. I'm like, I'm already crying because of the pain. Like, anyway. So it's funny that you bring that up because I'm like, wow, like this guy really didn't. I mean, his dad went through it, but didn't see it in the same way. I saw that transpire.
Yeah, that's a lot of cultural baggage that would
right.
I think we just saw, oh, this is how my dad did it. This is
but I had to come to terms too with the understanding that my dad didn't have a dad so it goes back to the whole thing that we see in our culture today, where the image and the place of a man wasn't in this household. So he had to kind of make it up as he went. Right. I'm not excusing it of certain things that happened that he was like, oh,
there's certain moments where I feel the same way. I'm like, I'm making it up as I go. For now, I don't have kids, but it's still with the wife. I'm like, so, don't say this, don't say that.
Right. So, but
dear Lord, please help me, give me wisdom.
And he will. But interestingly enough, a lot of the things that I didn't like about my father were coming out from within me. I'm talking about I'm already saved. I'm serving the Lord. Me and my wife are together. My kid's like 2 or 3, and I'm just finding myself being really short with him. And like, not often am I saying that I love him or want to be around him. And I'm like, this is weird. This is not, like, in my spirit, I knew that this is not something you do. Like, this is my son. This is of my flesh. And I would get bothered being around him. And
okay.
It's like, but as soon as I would recognize it, it seemed like it went away. And then continue on with my day. My wife, which I love her to death because she always calls me out on stuff. She was like, why are you acting that way? He's a kid. And I'm like, well,
I still struggle with that part. Like, like Yvonne will call me out. I'm like,
right. Well, trust me, bro.
I'm like, I know I need it, pero mira, mija.
Right. It's not something you want to hear right there and then, but it's something that you need to hear.
That's true.
Because it snaps you out of it.
No, very true.
Because if it just went along with con la corriente, then it just get worse. So after realizing that it was coming out, I'm like, man, I really need to do something about it. And I would sit down and speak with talk with my mentor about it. And he would point out the fact that I was holding on to certain things. I'm like, I forgave my father. Like, he lives out in Texas and now he has a new wife that I haven't even met. But it was like rooted in deeply. So deep that I openly admitted that I went through a therapist. When we sat down for quite a few sessions and a lot of stuff came up that I'm like, man, it explains a whole lot.
Ooh, therapy. Ooh, man, you already messed up like that? I did. When I was about to get married.
I know it's taboo in our culture, yeah. But why? Why does that have to be taboo in our culture?
Because it seems, well, at least to me, it seems like, oh, you couldn't figure it out on your own? Yeah, la regastes. Like, you failed. But
are we supposed to figure it all out by ourselves?
No, we're not. And I will say again, when I was about to get married, we decided like, yeah, there's a lot we're not getting right. You know what? We need to see premarital counseling. We need to take premarital counseling.
Right.
And, gracias a Dios here at City Reach, that is something that City Reach does offer with our pastors that are trained and, have years of experience.
I love it. We had premarital, postmarital.
Yeah, no, like it, and it's funny. I remember sitting down for the first of, oh man, aren't you going to take a notebook? For what? Aren't you going to take notes? I never take notes. Take a notebook. Okay. I'm like, man, I don't even know how. I'm like, I don't even remember how I took notes in college. All right, this is just figuring out how day one. Give it a theme.
Muy fregón. I went to college,
bro. Yeah, after not making it there, I went to Cal State YouTube. It's all fine.
There you go.
Anyways, sitting there, I'm like, oh man, how do I do this and that? And then I know she was feeling it too, and I was feeling that same thought. And maybe people that are listening to us may go through the same cycle where I was like, okay, are we going to yell at each other? Are we just going to air everything out? Or is she going to yell at me? Is this pastor about to find out my darkest secrets? Like, what's going on? It was, he sat us down in his office, walked us through pace by pace. Like, okay, this is what the outlook of these sessions are going to look like. Every session has a topic, and, we're going to, talk through it and this and that, and gave us exercises and everything, and we did talk out certain topics, like, okay, one by one each session. He doesn't do this, I don't do that, no. And then you realize, oh, it's a lot of little things that make this dumb. It's not one big thing, it's a lot. And you're like, oh, I'm a bonehead. I'm like, okay, I could fix that.
A lot of little things become a big thing.
Yeah. He gave the example is, sometimes divorces don't start because of a big scandal. It's literally, you've had it up to here. You saw a sock out of place, and that was your last straw. And that was like, okay, me voy de aquí. And I went and I was like,
why are you leaving? The sock was in the wrong place.
I know, ya no te aguanto como eres de puerco.
Apestas. Ya bañate. Shout out to my wife. She trained me on that one. She trained me.
No, but I thought about it. I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of little things. I'm like, oh. And you build up, but these are things that you think Okay, oh yeah, yo sé aquí, puros amarrones, you got it. And no, we all need a little help. Just because we may come from a Christian background, or we grew up, playing on stage, or serving as an usher, or cleaning, or as assistant pastor, you think you have it all, you figure it out. And no, you don't. No one has it as 100%.
Ever.
And there is always help. But again, as men and as Christian men, oh no, es que Dios me va a ayudar. Yeah, Dios is applying the help right there.
Te está dando el pastor para que te ayude.
And we still like, oh no.
But
no, está muy ocupado. Like he's doing 1,000 things. Yes, part of the 1,000 things he's gonna do is help you.
And this is the
to
key,
get to the kingdom.
And this is the key element that you and I both share in this venture, was that we were allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, which unfortunately in our within our Hispanic Mexican
I'm
culture,
myself way too much here, and it's gonna get worse.
Well, stop. Yeah, it's gonna get worse. But it's so, we took those key elements of wanting to be vulnerable. But why did we want to be vulnerable? Because we for the love of our wives. And
it's hard, man. I as much as I can talk, I don't want to talk. No, right. No me cae. But I'm like, I need this. I need to open up.
But if you don't, how does she know? How does she know?
Man, it explodes in this really bad way. And
it's horrible.
Yeah, and sometimes it just comes out as word vomit and blah blah blah, or ya no quiero, and then
no,
I'll go spend $200-$300 on a steak or something, of anger.
Should have ate before I came. But see, mine was more toxic than that. Mine was really worse. So anytime in the past when Ellie and I would have a discussion where she wanted to have a serious talk that I wanted to run away from, because I mean, since we're being vulnerable, I was scared to have that talk, because then I knew that I would need correction in the area. I would, one, get upset, two, get like completely angry for no reason, and three, I would jab at her and try to cut her with my words, so she would get so hurt that she would just stay quiet. And guess what?
Yeah, I think I used to do that. Now I'm more like, okay,
and we wouldn't
just listen, okay.
And
if I have an answer, yes or no, or we get into depth. Even in those situations, I still tend to be quiet and like, okay.
And now I am quiet. I don't release. I keep myself from reacting, so I hold myself to respond instead of reacting.
I tend to have the bad tendency of, okay, now I'm feeling some type of way, but I won't respond with a, oh, pero mira, or now it's a very.
Why is she saying this?
No, it's I respond with a yes, no, like straight poker. Oh. Yes, no, okay. And then if we need to get into the details, I try to keep it along those terms, and try to not show emotion, although you can hear the anger and the back of my voice, but I'm like, okay, just don't raise your voice, don't do this, don't do that. We can keep it calm and come rational.
So for you, why would you get upset in receiving correction?
I am not a person that grew up. Again, in growing up, I didn't know how to respond to ¿Quién hiciste la tarea? Porque, to any of that, I didn't just be like, when I finally grew to a certain age, and I think that character that comes naturally from a family, from my dad, I learned how to respond, and not disrespectfully, but I did learn how to respond. Yeah, but as I got older, it did get aggressive and did get blah, blah, blah. And I just don't like hearing it. I'm more of the, okay, tell me how it is. Okay. It's more like business. You tell me how it is. Okay. Thank you.
And I'll go forward.
I will go forward. But then hearing the details, I'm like, no, yeah.
It's a relationship, not a business.
I know, but I'm like, ya entendí, déjame en paz, ya. Dame un taco. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Again, I should have ate before we came.
I know. That's why I haven't really eaten. That's why I did this little juice protein thing, which I probably shouldn't finish the whole thing, but I'm hungry. Anyways, yeah, that's me. I don't like hearing the details, and if I can hear the details, it's fine. But when I feel like I'm being told the details, and I have to learn the end of the episode lesson right there, I'm like, no, like please just.
Yes.
I'm like, can I have a moment? Can I have a moment? Can I please? Can I have a moment and just like let it all.
It can happen like that sometimes, and for me that's
right.
Why
but if I how is it? Me desespero. I grow very impatient, and I'm like, let's get it done. Let's get it done. Come on, just get to the point. Get to the point.
Right. It doesn't,
and that feels like it's business when it is business. When I've had to be corrected at work or something,
But that's
like, okay,
work.
This and this. Okay, thank you, sir.
So now you're saying your wife's your boss?
She's the other half of the business.
Yeah, but you just said that, getting corrected at work. You just compared your wife to getting corrected at work.
No. I compared how I feel like I would like to get corrected.
It comes down to the same thing. Like you took correction as correction would always come from a hierarchy, as like something business based.
Right. No. But I'm saying that's how I prefer it. When I get in the other detail, I'm like,
you prefer it that way.
Yeah, because business is direct.
To
the point, and then Yes, sir. And then you work on whatever you need to correct or whatever it is.
But with any relationship, it's not going to be that because
no, I know. I understand that now. I still don't. I still don't always. I don't always comply, but yes,
we don't always comply. You could ask my wife. But see, and for me, it was just it was really weird. I would get upset and not want to receive correction because I already knew I messed up. Like, you don't have to reiterate to me where I fell short or what I failed, because in my mind, I'm already thinking I already failed before I even started.
I guess for me, it goes back, going back to how I was raised. It was, again, when I learned how to talk back, again, not disrespectfully, I learned that, hey, I could stand up for myself. I don't have to take this. I don't have to feel all, I know I messed up, So, like, fine, I get it. I messed up. And
like that. That's fine, I get it.
Mira, estás hablándose. I kind of eventually, again, I took that to adulthood, especially for the last couple of years. I had to answer to nobody for years.
Guess what? We take it all to adulthood.
Oh no, yeah. No, and that again, things I wasn't taught. So
we weren't, and then I wasn't taught until about 4 years ago. I don't want to put my age out there like that, but I'm a lot older now.
We're old, bro. Everybody can tell.
No, nobody really can guess my age. I act and look a lot younger than what my real age is. Well, I try to, anyways.
The beard gives it away.
I guess, but so. It was just funny because you carry all these things into adulthood and you don't even realize it. But what sucks about all that is that no one tells you. No, and the thing is, nobody's talking about it either. Right? Like even within the church, Big C church, not Little C church.
Yeah,
because we talk about it here, but
BC before Christ or before COVID?
No, I said Big C. Big C, BIGC, not BC. No, dude. Before Christ, come on, dude.
Okay. In the church I grew up in, and again, not criticizing it totally.
Totally.
Well, maybe because I was a kid. I don't recall. Yeah, I don't recall there being like a men's discipleship, like, hey, let's guide just the men on, issues or whatever. I remember there being a service for the married men and the women and the kids and the youth, but I don't remember there being. I could be wrong. Again, I was a kid of like, hey, let's set something aside for these women that are married, and maybe there's some counseling or something like. I don't remember there being anything like that. And again, now that I'm an adult,
right,
I am grateful that at the church that God has placed me in, there is.
Right, and because of the need, and again, I don't want to just put it down. I'm going to sound like I'm putting down our culture, but we were taught not to be vulnerable, and in order to have a men's discipleship ministry or gathering, you're admitting to fault, saying that I need to be vulnerable.
Yeah, you gotta be willing to be broken down,
right,
and break down yourself.
And having that space in the discipleship, you're able to be vulnerable without being judged, because we've all been through it.
And that's the other problem where I wouldn't say it's just a culture thing. I think it's a societal thing, like all around, like, oh, he's gonna know what I've done. He's gonna point the finger, and every time I come up there on stage, he's gonna look at me different. Like, and no, I have.
First of all, if he does look at you different, then he's not doing what he's supposed to do.
Right.
Because as that leader, as that pastor, you're not. I don't want to say you don't judge, but you correct with love. There's a lot of grace that's involved in that.
Yes.
And so
I've been learning in the last.
So
I've been here.
If you ask somebody to be vulnerable with you, can't sit there and be like, oh, no lo puedo creer, no me hables. Because it's like you just ask the guy to be vulnerable.
impío.
Es un imbécil. But it's like,
¿Cómo pudiste hacer esto? Well, I wasn't with Christ, sir. I wasn't with Christ.
Right. Number one, you probably weren't with Christ. And number two, you just asking me to be vulnerable. And now that I'm being vulnerable, you're condemning me.
Es un puerco. Like, ay, ¿cómo pudiste? I wasn't with Christ, sir.
Eres un alcohólico. No estaba con Dios.
Yeah.
No conocía a Jesús.
Me and Chewy weren't tight.
Well, the only Chewy I was tight with was sitting behind the bar. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But things, gracias a Dios, things change.
They do change. And I believe that's why this podcast is so great. The idea that we're able to talk about these things that are not being talked about.
And we will be talking a lot about this.
A lot of stuff. Because how many times haven't people backslidden and they find themselves in a weird spot, in a weird area where they feel like they can't talk to anybody, but they have to outgrow that season or surpass that season in order to get into the next season.
And then le preguntas a tu tío que no sabe. Like, oiga, tío, tengo un problema. And then your tío can give you wisdom, but if it's not in a Christ-like fashion, you might get the wrong advice, man.
Exactly. And then on another hand, say you're not backsliding, you're a brand new congregant, a brand new conversion, just coming to Christ. What do I do now? If nobody comes alongside you to say, hey, I'm here, come alongside you.
How would they know? How would they know?
They wouldn't know. And so that's, in a nutshell, why the Remnant Podcast is so important, because these things that we could talk about aren't being talked about. And we're praying that it helps out, that it will help somebody out there. Hopefully like 100,000 subscribers pretty soon. But in essence, like, for example, like with this episode, this very first episode, where men aren't taught to be emotional, men aren't taught to be vulnerable when we need to be. And the greatest example we have of vulnerability was Jesus Christ. Anytime he wanted to, he could have been called, I'm ready to go home. But he didn't.
Vámonos, aquí no se puede con esos. Yeah.
So, I mean, and I don't know. To me, this was always a subject that was like close to me, because I'm like, man, I wasn't taught these things right away.
No, and unfortunately, there will be a lot of viewers that have probably gone through the same thing. Again, but we weren't taught either, whether we grew up within church or without, and now have come to Christ, but just we didn't receive. I think as a culture, more of us, because we're Latinos, whereas there's that just machismo, figure it out on your own, porque no lo sabes, porque no aprendes, kind of mentality, and then
it's because you don't read your Bible enough,
right?
I'm saying there's times where yes, that could be that is the right answer, but there's other times where somebody just wants you to lend the ear. Or
I know it's not always about throwing the Bible at you. It's always, Jesus is love. Give someone a hug. Sometimes it's really just that, I come dejar atacar a otro, give him a hug. Give him a hug. Give him a hug. And that's why I think, going to the beginning of what I started talking about,
circle back.
We don't hear I love you enough. And I don't know when I started doing that, where it doesn't matter who it is, and if they don't feel like saying it back, and it's fine.
Right.
I try to end calls with, hey, I love you, bro. Whether it be the worship pastor, whether it be my brother, who probably would never say that to me like that, but I always, hey, Luis, hey, I love you. Thank you for calling. Or whatever. I love you, bro.
Wait, so do you both have the exact same name?
Luis Olvera.
Both
yes.
of you? Really?
Yes. Except now he goes by Lou. I still go by Luis or Louis. Everybody calls him Louis or Lou. And that's what he prefers.
Like, this is my brother.
Yeah.
Luis.
So like, yeah. Or he'll be like Louis, and I'll be like, oh, it's my brother Lou. Like out of respect, I'm like, all right, I'll follow his, his tenure
lead.
and be like, oh, it's Lou.
Dang, that's crazy.
It's weird. And I don't know, but I did find it cool when he was at the wedding, because he is the closest thing I have to a father figure,
Right.
when it comes to blood.
Right.
So it's been nice to get advice from him.
Cool.
Like any advice, you take it with a grain of salt. Some things you take directly, some things you like, oh, maybe not that or whatever, but his advice has been so valuable. And I will say in that I'm very thankful to God that I do get to see that kind of full circle of like, okay, well, maybe your dad couldn't be your dad, but this other man that is of your blood can be someone to help guide you in certain fields.
That's awesome.
Now we gotta bring him to Christ.
Ooh,
slowly.
Let's do it
slowly.
And I think that's where the relationship with me and my younger brother has developed too, because him and I, we've started talking a lot more. Like, and I always get criticized, especially by my wife too, which I love you, honey. It went from like once a month, once every 2 months to like now it's like at least once a week. And it's like, wow.
For me, it's still hard to talk to my brother and not on any emotional issues. Just he has a 9 to 5. He lives pretty distant from his job. So he wakes up early, drives down with his coworkers, works his day, goes back. And versus me, I'm traveling all over the country doing audio.
Right. And seeing it works out with me and my brother because we have like opposite schedules. So when I'm going to sleep, he's barely going into work. So we always find that gap where...
Does he work in Japan or what?
No, he works nights.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's like we find that gap and it's like, okay, I can talk to you for an hour. And boom.
¿Cómo estás, compadre?
Yeah,
¿Cómo te va?
basically.
¿Qué nomás?
Yeah. Love that guy. Praying. I know the Lord's reaching him little by little.
So for now, this is where we're going to leave episode 1. But we do invite you to like, subscribe. We are going to try to make sure that all our information is on the bottom of the screen and that you can reach us on all our social medias. And one thing we will always emphasize, if you need prayer, if you need advice, if we can't give you the advice that you need, we feel like we don't have it, we will try to point you in the right direction. Yep. We all need help. And sometimes we all need a hug. So guys, thank you for joining us for episode 1 of the Remnant Podcast.